Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky, like so many composers that we know, was destined for a secure but mundane career. As a young man, he was employed by the Ministry of Justice in St. Petersburg, where, in addition to his hobby of composing, he spent his off hours as a member of the social circle of dandies and elites in the city, which, after a while, left him feeling empty, unfulfilled, and, so typical of this composer, consumed by a sense of melancholy. 19th century Russian society was full of music being performed in every possible venue. Recordings were still a half century off in the future, so the only way to hear music was live, whether for orchestra, opera, chamber music, piano. But there was an exception. There was a mechanical invention known as the Orchestrion, sort of a giant music box in an ornate wooden cabinet, available for home purchase. And Tchaikovsky's father brought an Orchestrion home when the boy was 5 years old. And like its relative, the player piano, you could purchase cylinders for the Orchestrion designed to play your favorite musical works. And the Tchaikovsky household was treated to popular works by Rossini, Bellini, and Donizetti, the sort of light musical fare perfect for a home music machine. Here is what the Orchestrion sounded like playing the popular Radetzky March by Johann Strauss. And that's the sort of work that was ideal for this instrument. Well, somehow amidst all of these confections, Tchaikovsky's father also brought home a few cylinders of Mozart's music. And young Pyotr Ilyich was transported by music from Mozart's opera Don Giovanni. Specifically, he mentioned the exquisite aria Vedrai Carino, sung by the peasant girl Zerlina to her boyfriend Mazzetto, who's just been smacked around by Don Giovanni. Vedrai Carino, you will see, my dear one, she sings, how she will tend to his wounds with love and kisses and gorgeous music. Now, I can't imagine how that would adapt to the calliope sound of the Orchestrion, but the young Tchaikovsky was carried away, so his mother taught him to play this music on the piano. And this early contact with Mozart's music had a profound effect on Tchaikovsky, who at age 17 finally had a chance to see a full production of Don Giovanni and to experience Mozart's masterpiece in all of its glory. And this event was instrumental in Tchaikovsky's ultimate decision at age 22 to quit the civil service gig and enter the St. Petersburg Conservatory as one of its more senior students. And as Tchaikovsky continued the struggles of his composing career, greatly complicated by his own personal struggles, he would often unwind by writing music of a lighter nature, miniatures or a divertissement, and he did this with great ease. Here's an example. After Tchaikovsky completed his mighty Fourth Symphony in 1877, a very trying experience, wrestling with fate and all of that, he busied himself with a lighter work, a suite, a collection of dances for orchestra. His suite, Opus 43, Suite Number 1. He would go on to write 4 orchestral suites, and these are entirely separate works from his symphonies and from the suites drawn from his ballets, from Nutcracker and Swan Lake. Entirely different works. And the first suite is in 6 movements. It closes with a gavotte, the popular old world French dance, and it is delightful. It has a stately quality to it with clear Russian overtones. A perfect example of Tchaikovsky's fascination with old musical styles, but it was his love of Mozart, above all, that provided something of a sanctuary for him, both musically and spiritually. And in his early 40s, Tchaikovsky would write to his benefactress, Nadezhda von Meck, "I not only love Mozart, I worship him. His Don Giovanni was the first music that made a profound impression on me. For me, it awoke a sacred conviction that has borne fruit. It is to Mozart that I owe the dedication of my life to music." I realize this may surprise you, my dear friend. I too am surprised that such a broken, morally and mentally unsound person as myself has preserved the capacity to enjoy Mozart. I mentioned Tchaikovsky's 4 orchestral suites, the fourth of which is closely related to his love of Mozart, and which we'll look at in just a bit. But first, in 1889, Tchaikovsky was commissioned for what many consider his operatic masterpiece, The Queen of Spades, based on a novella by the great Russian poet Alexander Pushkin. The plot of the opera takes place among Russian society during the reign of Catherine the Great, the mid-18th century, and there's a major scene that required Mozartian music. So during the royal entertainment scene in Act 2, instead of the standard Russian folk characters, clowns and jesters and tumblers and buffoons and all of that, we have a lovely miniature opera within Tchaikovsky's opera. And here, his love of Mozart really took flight. So much so that I want to do a little quiz here. I will play 2 examples at a time to compare the real Mozart with Tchaikovsky's imitation Mozart. So for the first of these comparisons, we have a march, which is in duple meter, and the second is a minuet in triple meter, as they should be. Otherwise, they sound alike. So which of these is Mozart and which Tchaikovsky? So which is which? Well, the first excerpt is the entrance march in Tchaikovsky's opera, The Queen of Spades, composed in 1889. And the second excerpt, the minuet, is from Mozart's Post-Horn Serenade, which was composed in 1779, 110 years earlier. Here's the second comparison I want you to hear. The first excerpt is in A major. It's very pastoral in nature. And the second is a little march in C major. But you'll notice that they are practically the same melody, at least for the first phrase. So, again, which is Mozart and which Tchaikovsky? I'm sure you notice the similarity. Again, the first one, the lovely pastoral music, is Tchaikovsky's Queen of Spades. The audience is watching a mini opera based on the Greek legend of Daphnis and Chloe. That one. Okay? And the second excerpt was a march theme from the first movement of Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 25. Sounds like Tchaikovsky not only adopted Mozart's style, but the actual theme itself. But that's enough of that. You get the point. But before we move on, let's hear an excerpt from this Daphnis and Chloe duet from The Queen of Spades. This time with the 2 solo voices as we marvel at the beauty of Tchaikovsky's Mozartian persona. Just lovely. But now, let's back up 2 years in Tchaikovsky's life 1887 was the 100th anniversary of the premiere of Mozart's Don Giovanni, and this inspired an homage from Tchaikovsky. The fourth of his orchestral suites is entitled Mozartiana, and Tchaikovsky did something rather unexpected here. Instead of creating a fantasy in his own style on themes of Mozart, Tchaikovsky simply chose 4 works by Mozart and orchestrated them. So his homage does not presume to recompose Mozart into something of his own. Rather, Tchaikovsky creates a display, a showcase for Mozart's own genius. And for the first 2 of the 4 movements of his suite, Tchaikovsky chose late works by Mozart written for the keyboard, and he orchestrated them, using an orchestra that's larger, but not by much, than what Mozart himself would have used. The first movement is Mozart's Kleine Gigue, Little Gigue, the folk dance in a quick triple meter that's known as the Gigue in English. And Mozart gave this little piece its own separate number in his catalog of works. In the 19th century Koelschel catalog, the Little Gigue is K574. It's quite late, and it's a very advanced work, as you will hear. First of all, we will hear it in its original piano version. We're in a quick triple rhythm, the da-da-da-da-da, 1, 2, 3, da-da. So marvel at this. When I first learned Tchaikovsky's Fourth Suite, I didn't know this Gigue. I was amazed by its complexity, and I assumed that Tchaikovsky had modernized Mozart's original, added lots of funky harmonies and rhythms. I was stunned to find out that Tchaikovsky hadn't changed a thing. All he did was to transcribe it for orchestra. So let's look at Mozart's original that you just heard in some detail. The Gigue is written in 2 halves, and it's voiced in 3 parts: top, a middle, and a bass voice. And once again, it's in this quick triple meter, but I'll play it much slower. All right. But as you listen to this rhythm, you're not quite certain that you're hearing 2 groupings of 3 notes, da 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 da, the 1 and the 2, or 3 groups of 2 notes, da da dee da 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 da. Count with me. We're in G major, 1 and the 2. The second voice enters. The third voice enters. Now there's more harmony because we have all the voices going. Now we have this rising sequence. It's in the melody, but it's all on the offbeats. 1 and 1 and. The defining rhythm is in the lower voices. Now the syncopated thing goes to the bass line, and the supposedly defining rhythm is in the middle, like so. 1, 2, 2, 3, 1. Does anybody know where the rhythm is yet? I don't know. And the upper voice at this point has these big leaps to it. My goodness. Now Mozart condenses the entrances of the melody. And when the bass takes it over, moves into D minor, and Mozart writes sustained chords in the right hand to help define the harmonies, and they need a lot of defining. A Neapolitan chord. My goodness, so we made it through to D major, and cadenced in D major, the dominant key, which is right where we should be at the middle point of the Gigue. Let's hear the first half of the Gigue now in Tchaikovsky's transcription. For the second half of the Gigue, we start out with just the top and the lowest voices. The textures are very bare, but the harmonies implied are these. My goodness, but the interaction of the two voices, high and low, very, very precise, is meticulous as a two-part invention by Bach. And when we get to that minor passage again, now in the left hand, we're in G minor with the chords in the right hand, here it is. Made it through to a cadence in G major, the tonic key, but we're not quite done yet because Mozart writes a little coda. Okay, enough crazy harmony. So we end up with a little octave unison for the end. Here is Tchaikovsky's transcription of the second half of the Gigue. We've been doing a little series of short episodes on harmony, and believe me, I could spend a long episode just looking at this fantastic Gigue of Mozart. Now, for the second movement of his orchestral suite, Mozartiana, Tchaikovsky chose another short keyboard work by Mozart, also remarkable and obscure too, but it doesn't seem quite as radical since it's a courtly minuet. And it begins very gracefully. It's in D major. But immediately the third beat features an odd chromaticism in the bass. Here. That's one of those augmented triads we've talked about. Yes? And it continues. It's a lovely, elegant phrase, also very similar to a phrase, and I want to point this out, from Mozart's opera Don Giovanni, which he wrote 2 years earlier. In the opera, it is in the servant Leporello's famous catalogue aria, in which he describes the Don's legions of amorous conquests. Not exactly a stellar Me Too moment in the history of opera, I'm afraid. But the first half of the aria is very zany. It's a patter aria. But the second half is an elegant minuet in D major. And when Leporello is describing what the Don likes about certain women, he says it's their sweetness. Essentially the same phrase he uses in the opening of this lovely but unique keyboard minuet. And as Mozart moves on now, take that augmented triad from the first measure. Mozart uses it now to extend the music like so. There's your augmented triad and a rising chromatic line. And this. Rising chromatic in seventh chords, and a third one higher. And it settles comfortably into A major, the dominant key, right where we should be at the midpoint of the minuet. And moving on into the middle section now, here is the harmonic groundwork that Mozart will use, just the chords. And Mozart's so genteel, so pleasing, so charming. That's why we like him. Here's how he harmonizes this passage. The The voice leading is perfect, but those dissonances are so striking. And there's some passage work, and the opening of the minuet now returns, but the harmonies are darker and more bare. And finally, la, and now the return of those augmented chords. This is not César Franck I'm playing, this is Mozart, even though I'm filling it in a bit. And again, the third time, it settles comfortably into D major now, the tonic key where it ends. Here is Tchaikovsky's transcription now of this minuet, and you will certainly agree that the warmth of the strings in the orchestra intensify the music. Mozart's autograph score of this minuet has been lost, so it's been difficult to tell exactly when it was written. One prominent scholar said, quote, "It wanders about, homeless, in Mozart's work." But it's now agreed that it is a late work written at the same time as the Gigue. And again, Tchaikovsky did Mozart and all of us a great service by choosing this unknown minuet for his suite, thus rescuing it from its obscurity. And for the third movement of Mozartiana, Tchaikovsky began with a very inspired choice, but maybe didn't follow through in the best possible way. He chose Mozart's awesome late motet for chorus, organ, and strings, Ave Verum Corpus, a Latin text of the Catholic Church, and one in which Mozart's music absolutely matches the austere and mystical quality of the text. Ave Verum Corpus, hail, true body, born of the Virgin Mary. And once again, as with the Gigue and Minuet, Tchaikovsky clearly favored Mozart's late works and their daring harmonies, because the middle section of this motet is really quite amazing. But Tchaikovsky, unfortunately, did not use Mozart's original for his third movement, but instead turned to composer Franz Liszt, who loved taking works of other composers and creating elaborate transcriptions, fantasies for solo piano. So Liszt had taken Mozart's rarefied Ave Verum Corpus, and in 1865 he worked it up into his own display piece called From the Sistine Chapel for solo piano. And Tchaikovsky orchestrated this version, adding an introduction and a coda in which he used the harp in the orchestra prominently, which has two drawbacks. One is financial, one is artistic. Number one, if you program Mozartiana, use a small orchestra, you have to hire a harpist for this one movement only. And number two, the harp adds a rather gaudy and slightly cheesy romantic aura to Liszt's already questionable version of Mozart's motet. I know this gets complicated. What is Liszt and what is Tchaikovsky and what is Mozart? But here is the closing of Tchaikovsky's third movement, complete with its heavenly, angelic harping.